Sometimes in these stories and sermons, I'll focus in on a point of the story that maybe isn't as obvious to you. Maybe there's something in the Greek or there's something in the context of the times that I want to take out and share with you and have a new insight there. Other times, the best sermons are the things you already know. And I'm just taking, you told me the story. As a Greek, you told me the story. You know what happened. And sometimes the best sermons are just, yep, here's what happened. Here's why it matters still today. Today, I couldn't decide this week whether to give you a sermon about that one or that one. So you get two little baby sermons today, and probably that means you got a 1 in 2 chance. You might like either one of them. So, what does not make sense in this story for our context? A few months ago, we had a story in which it mentioned a tax collector back in Jesus' day. And I didn't go down that path. I didn't explain what a tax collector was in Jesus' day. And someone after the sermon said, "What are you doing? People are going to think Jesus was some libertarian who thinks that taxes are theft." And I thought, oh my God, did I do that? No, because Jesus has no problem with taxes. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, right? You've heard him say that? So this story about a tax collector, we're going to start with what the heck that means. Jesus had no problem with taxes. Everything I gleaned from Jesus, in fact, he seems far more concerned with spending taxes on the well-being of people and communities rather than fancy chariots and helping rich Romans get richer. But that's not the point here. This is the tax collector. The point here is that everyone in that time had a problem with tax collectors. And that distinction between taxes and collectors, that's the issue here for their context. See, back then there was not an IRS. There was not oversight. There was not certain tax brackets for everyone. In fact, there was a pretty steep and meaningful difference between what Caesar asked for and the official tax rates that someone might have and the taxes that were actually collected by the collectors. And that gap is why the Bible hated tax collectors, that gap. See, they were Roman agents, tax collectors were, that were tasked with recovering and sending back maybe the 10, maybe the 20, maybe the 30% of what everyone might have earned. But do you think they would only take 10 or 20 or 30%? No, they would take whatever they wanted. 30%, 50%, 70%. And do you think they would take 30 or 50 or 70% from the rich and the powerful? No, they would take it from the poor who had no recourse. And do you think all the tax collectors just came from Rome so the locals could just complain about those people? No. Often what Rome would do is they would hire locals to take advantage of other locals. And Zacchaeus is a Hebrew name, someone who worked his way up from being a local in his neighborhood, worked his way up to be the chief tax collector for the area by taking advantage of his own neighbors however he could. So, on one hand, tax collectors are just a practical evil in those days. Not the taxes, but the men who always took more than they should, because men always take more than they should. And next to the practical evil of greed, tax collectors were also this symbol of just power abuse. They were a symbol of a broken system. Now, does anyone ever feel like we have a broken system? Does anyone ever feel like it's just rigged against you? It's rigged sometimes, and that drives us crazy. But no matter how far away Congress or Caesar might be, in those days, tax collectors were not far away. You would run into that guy at your grocery store. You would run into that guy at church. They weren't just on TV and Twitter. They would just be everywhere around you, and you seethed with the injustice. So if you want to make this story a little closer, to take that context and put it in ours, take out tax collector and plug in greedy person who games the system for their own advantage. And there are a lot of those. Elizabeth was telling me about like how is it in America we can let these people prey on young people for their desire to smoke cigarettes, and now we're going to shove vapes in their mouth and make them pay a lot of money to do awful things. And yeah, it happens a lot. Maybe it's someone who stashes their company offshore to avoid paying taxes to a society they take part in. Maybe it's someone who uses their power to lobby for teachers and nurses to make less, and military contractors and pharmaceutical CEOs to make more. Maybe it's someone who pays their own employees something below a living wage and then pins the bill on the food stamps on all of us and then argues that we shouldn't have food stamps so that they can hire more people to pay them at lower than a minimum wage. That's tax collectors in our society. And if you saw someone like that, fancy suit, smug grin, self-important sensibility, if you saw that person in this town having lunch in Kathmandu with the Dalai Lama, you would think, what is the Dalai Lama doing with that guy? That doesn't make sense. I mean, someone's so enlightened. Why would someone so enlightened spend time with that? How dare it? And if it was Jesus, you would have thought, I thought Jesus was on our side and against greed. And if it was him having lunch with such a traitor, why would someone so pure and innocent as Jesus have lunch with someone so dirty and guilty as Zacchaeus? And for what it's worth, the Hebrew name Zacchaeus, anyone know what it means? Pure and innocent, which might be part of the point of this story, to turn our assumptions on their head. So, hopefully that part of the story makes a little sense for us. But a lot of this story, you said it makes immediate sense no matter where you live or when you live or who you are. Let's just take out what Zacchaeus did for a living. Just look at him as a guy. He's just a guy who wants a better life. He seeks out Jesus because he wants a better life. But he faces some barriers, both logistical and from his own shortcomings. So the best he can do is climb a tree. And he's interested, but he's from a safe distance. Now today, all sorts of people want a better life. And some of them are very interested in what Jesus has to say about that. And a lot of them get turned away by certain barriers, such as the church itself. We hear the church with political hypocrisy. We might not like the music in a church. Maybe Sunday morning has soccer practice. Just whatever it might be, there are barriers for those who are interested in what Jesus has to say and then receiving that. And so a lot of people who really want to live better, they get stuck behind that, or they get stuck behind their own guilt. I mean, we say this line a lot in here. It's like people come in these doors all week. It happens every month. Someone comes in these doors, and they look up kind of jokingly and say, "Oh, is the lightning going to hit me?" And somehow that's offended at least one person in here. But a lot of people come in here and they think, am I allowed to be in church? Would God be angry at me for being in church? They get turned away by their own guilt. And the answer is no. Look around. Look at the weirdos we have in this church. We're all chief weirdo, right? So I see it all the time. People searching at a safe distance, climbing these trees of meditation, climbing these trees of community service, climbing these trees of self-help books, all good things. But they are stuck behind this guilt and unfulfillment, and they have this curiosity and open eyes, but they're maybe not quite ready. Some other parts of this story will make sense for our context because we know what it's like. There are so many reasons why I should never meet up with the holy. There are so many reasons why the interest in a better life just gets stuck. But Jesus pushes through the crowds. Remember, there's a lot of crowds. If Zacchaeus can't get to him, how easy it would be for him to get there. He pushes through the crowds, looks up at the tree, ignores Zacchaeus' bashfulness, and just invites himself to his house. We're going to go have lunch. You pick up the tab. Right? He goes to Zacchaeus' house. He doesn't invite him out. And you wonder, why doesn't God ever push into my life like that? I mean, I want a better life. I want more peace. I want more grace. I want more love. And yet all this junk happens. All these barriers happen in my life to keep me away from that. Why doesn't God ever push into my life? My story is, if you start looking for the places where God might have pushed into your life, when something holy pursued you, whenever you tried to hide from it, where none of your excuses ever seemed to keep deep grace away, if you start asking, how did I get to here? In this life I've lived, it's twisted and turned. How did I get to here? I'll bet there are some places. There are some times when God butted in, when God took your curiosity and followed it up with grace. Another part of this, more of this story that makes sense for our context. With the help of some spiritual guidance, this guy, Zacchaeus, decides to make some changes. He recognizes the faults of his past, as many of us do. He even takes steps to make amends. And hopefully that's familiar to people. At 11 o'clock at night, you're sitting there thinking, oh, why did I do that? I'm going to make some steps to make amends. His issue is greed, but yours might be anything. It might be alcohol or insensitivity, or you just want to get in shape or learn to pray better, whatever it is. But the issue is less important than that desire and that realization. I want to get better. That hopefully is a familiar feeling when you're sitting up there and you're just demanding, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep doing this? So you want to go from grace to getting better. Here's the part that really should make sense. Do you think Zacchaeus followed through with getting better?
No.
Anyone optimistic about that? We don't know. Do you think he had setbacks? I mean, maybe he started this process to pay back everyone he defrauded. Remember, he says, I'm going to give half to the poor and then I'm going to pay back 4 times whoever I defrauded. Do you think he ever started doing that and then wondered, well, 4 times is a lot of money. Maybe I'll just pay him back twice as much as I stole from them. Maybe he started thinking, I stole from Dennis, but Dennis was a real jerk yesterday at the grocery store, and so I'm not going to give money back to him. I'll give it back to you, but not back to him. Did he ever start going down that path toward living better and then just not quite get The story doesn't say one way or another. I'm not telling you what Zacchaeus did or didn't do. I just think it's really interesting that we have to wonder if in this process, from lost to found, we sang it earlier this morning, from lost to found, is it a straight line? Has it ever been a straight line for you? Probably not for him either. He probably got stuck in some of his greed. And it doesn't say that, but in my experience, most people who want to live better, most people who are so sincere about wanting to move from spiritual emptiness to life, to living again, it usually takes a few tries. It usually takes a lot of support. It usually takes a lot of steps forward with a couple steps back. It usually takes some real struggles to think about the world differently and some real struggles to think about yourself differently. For some of you, maybe cold turkey has worked. Tough love has worked for you, but for most of us, it takes a process. And they have to keep climbing the tree of curiosity, and they have to keep receiving grace, and they have to keep pledging to themselves, I want to do better, I want to do better, I want to do better. Now see, God is in the business of saving the lost. God is in the business of saving the lost people, the lost souls. And the lost are in the business, we are all Zacchaeus at one point or another, we are in the business of repentance and renewal, and repentance and renewal, and repentance and renewal. And if you can do that in one shot, awesome. I'm going to stop smoking. Dear God, help me. Done. Is that a new one story? Probably not. It's pretty hard. If it is, I'm jealous. If that's your story, I want to do this better. Done. You know, that'd be great, but maybe you're just not shooting high enough. Maybe it's like a little too little of a thing here. Dig your heart a little deeper, and if you want to address that, get a little deeper, then get ready to have repentance and renewal over and over and over. But if you get that curiosity, if that makes sense to you, and you feel that pull, dear God, I'm going to face my judgmentalism. Please help me with that. Oh, God, I was judgmental again today. Can you help me again? Oh, God, I don't know what it is. It just sneaks into my head. I just start thinking something, and all of a sudden I've judged that person. Please, keep helping me. Keep helping me. Keep helping me. That's renewal and repentance. That's what I hope Zacchaeus found when salvation entered the house. I hope that he kept living out his salvation, kept living it out as he made steps toward holiness. Now, the lost do get found, but the found have to keep finding their way. And they keep finding it with the grace of a God that never gives up, with the power of love that pursues you at every step. The good news is that you're never alone on that. And I mean that spiritually, and I mean that in a community. For a lot of issues, there are a lot of support networks like counselors and hospitals and churches. So it's people, it's prayer, it's pills. You are not alone, and that's good news. But the hard work is still up to us. So tell God you're ready for it. Whatever it is that you need to make that better life in you, tell God you're ready for it. And maybe God will sneak in and start changing your life.